All right, let's go, team. Let's do it. This is the first podcast, Cameron, I've done for ages.
Yeah,
So
it's
it's
been ages.
exciting.
It has.
Glad to be part of it
All right. So
Mm.
you
and
ready?
excited to be there with you all.
Oh, so excited, mate. So excited. All right, let's go. You on, Cam? You
We're
recording?
we're on.
All right. Well, good morning, Tartaria, Australia. We are back, and it's very exciting. This is the first podcast Cam and I've done for a few weeks, so very excited. And of course, we've got our very special guest, Michelle Gibson, in the house, who is on her way in a few weeks to Australia to do, particularly for us up here in the Sunshine Coast, gig at Montville, and we are super pumped. So welcome you two. I haven't spoken to you both for so long. I'll
Oh
shut up
yes,
now.
and welcome, Michelle. How you going?
It's great to talk to you always. Always enjoy our conversations and looking forward to seeing you again
Oh,
and spending time with you and just kind of picking up where we left off in our
It's been a
last
few years since we've been in each other's
presentations and our
energy.
last trip
Yeah.
together.
Yes, and your first trip to
And
Australia.
the thread really the threads really all tie together, and that's something that I want to share from my research on just how similar everything is everywhere. It doesn't matter where you are on the surface of today's Earth. You can find the same patterns, the same configurations,
Yeah.
the same infrastructure, no matter where you are. And the issue is that the history gives us this explanation that it was done during colonial times by the founders.
Convicts and all
They
that,
built it.
yes. Yeah.
But when you start picking it apart and pulling the veil back, that does not hold water.
mm.
And my journey doing this work, we all come into it in different ways for different reasons. And I know, speaking for myself, I can only do it the way I'm guided to do it, which started over 8 years ago and no end in sight. And I need to take a break. And we were saying when we started, it's like after you kind of get to the point where I need to stop. I need to just take some time off, but I
Yeah.
can't.
Mhm.
I know,
You
right?
know, it, there's just way too much. This trip to Australia will be a little bit of a vacation in the sense that it's out of my normal routine, and just the exhilaration of being in a new part of the world and having new experiences and meeting a lot of different people. And so it'll have that aspect to it, but you know probably need to look into a cruise one of these days.
Oh, I
Yes,
love
just
cruising.
just
a cruise.
unplug and take some
Yes,
time off.
I'm into that.
Maybe.
So, Cam, you've got
I
a
don't know.
slight lag going on with you at the moment.
Oh,
Just
do
so you
I?
know,
Let
just
me
so that
check.
we know, we'll probably be talking over each other just slightly. Well, Michelle, this is your first time to Australia. That is very exciting. The last time we saw Michelle, we were in Bosnia. We did the Bosnia trip together, and that was just so much fun. And it was just so much fun. So we are so excited to host you here at Montville. And that's just so everyone knows that's happening on the 18th of September. It's an evening gig, so I thought I'd crack open some champagne and nibbles and make it a little bit more sophisticated and nice. It's not a full day presentation, so we've just sort of like we're meeting sort of like around 5 o'clock in the afternoon, with it kicking off at 6, and Michelle's going to present. So it's not Cam and I presenting everyone. We're just going to be there, like sort of introing her, and then maybe Cam and I will join in with some Q&As at the end. We'll see how we go, but I'm sure you, Michelle, have got a fantastic presentation already organized, and I hear rumors it's specific to Queensland and Australia. Is that correct?
It's called Mostly Queensland.
Mostly
Mostly
Queensland. That's so
Queensland.
fun.
So I'm going to focus primarily on Queensland and bring it home. The same kinds of things I'm finding everywhere else I find in Queensland. And the very first time I trekked through the area in my research was following a lane line that went through that part of Australia from Darwin to Cairns in a straight line alignment. And I did that back in 2018. And what I'm finding now is when I go back and look at my earlier work, I pulled out the major pieces of my focus now, waterfalls and history of railroads and mining. Okay. The thing is, all of these things tie together.
Mm. Did you come across pyramids on that alignment from Darwin to Cairns? There's one called Black Mountain and one called Walsh's Pyramid up that way.
Not specifically. I looked at a lot of similar things along the way. So there's Howard Springs outside of Darwin, and there's big megalithic stone blocks at Howard Springs. And I pulled an example from Martin Nature Park in Oklahoma City, where you have gigantic megalithic stone blocks, same kind of layout where they're, nobody's supposed to notice their megalithic stones, but it's the same idea. They've hidden it right under our noses.
Yeah,
And
it's just
so,
natural geology, right?
right.
Made 1 million years ago.
Yes.
Right, exactly. And these megalithic stone blocks are everywhere. They're everywhere, but we don't tune into them because we haven't been told that they're there. We haven't been told about the civilization. We don't see it. We think they're boulders and they're natural, but they're megalithic blocks. They're worked and shaped. And I first started noticing that when I was living in Oklahoma City, and waking up to all of this. I'm like doing double takes because I'm starting to see these things on the sidewalk and next to signs and just hanging out. And I see them everywhere. Definitely here in Arizona where I live, in work that I've done looking at Australia and other places. I saw them in the Balkans when we were there.
Yes, the big marbles, big spheres. Yeah.
I saw so many things, like my eyes were bugging out. My brain was bursting because it's like, it's the same things.
Yeah.
And so the evidence for this worldwide civilization that was integrated, that was geometrically laid out in relationship to each other and to what's going on up in the heavens. So it's astronomically aligned, and this whole idea of a free energy grid. And that's really where my research has been taking me, and what I'm the most interested in, because I've been following ley lines from the beginning, based on my own findings, and then I just expanded that and extended these lines that I found, and then I've tracked them, and so I've gone from place to place to place to place all over the earth for years now, and I kept coming across wetlands, bogs, marshes, swamps, dunes, and this land that, we're told is natural, and we're never given the explanation. This is ruined land, and that's what I think we're looking at. So you look at
Ruined.
all ruined land. I mean, just look
Yep.
around the coast of where you live,
Mm.
and there's marshes
Yeah. So I
and
was going to
bogs.
say, so you don't think they're like filtration systems for the water, that they're just like where they've trashed the land, do you think?
I think that's where the land was destroyed. And
Was
my
destroyed, yeah.
working hypothesis is that there was an energy grid that was destroyed, and that when that energy grid was destroyed, it destroyed the surface of the earth, and that
Yeah,
what we see
basically,
today is
you
not
think it
what
was like shorted out and basically fried.
so it was fried.
Oh,
Hang on just a sec. I
we
don't know where
lost
I
your
went.
face.
There we go. So I believe that the grid was targeted and that it was perfectly tuned. It was a perfectly tuned scientific and musical instrument, and that this is either a directed energy or a directed frequency that caused this cataclysmic event. And because of the power of the grid, of this energy grid, this free energy grid that was working in concert all over the earth, it caused the land to be destroyed. And that what we see today is not what it was like prior to this event. And I don't think it was that long ago.
Mm-hmm. Would you
And
say maybe around 500 years or
Yeah, what's
longer
your
than
less,
that?
guess?
less, because
Less.
we're still using that infrastructure. We're still
Mm.
using that infrastructure. Everything they said they built, we're still using.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They've
That
got
this
series
of
of
what
this.
remains,
Mm,
what hasn't
Mm.
been destroyed. We're still using that infrastructure.
mm,
And so even though, from what I'm gathering with our different lines of research, it's not mutually exclusive. Yes, there was an invasion. There's no doubt in my mind there was an invasion. And what remains of this energy grid, I believe, was turned into the matrix. So we've both looked at extractive systems and extracting our energy and extracting the Earth's resources, which I believe were the components of this original energy
yeah.
grid. They knew where to go. They knew where to go mine. And I'm finding these mines all along ley lines. And
Okay.
they're not our friends. And so, I'll give an example in my presentation on Queensland, the Mary Kathleen mine. It's a campground now, and it was a uranium mine.
Yeah. Yeah, there's many
And that
schools in
happens a
Australia.
lot.
Yes, there's many schools built on old dump sites and old toxic sites. Many buildings, communities all over Australia. Yeah, and the world.
Mm.
So my research is taking me to this infrastructure of the grid. And I've been looking at waterfalls. I've been looking at gorges, which has taken me to, so I was doing the research for this presentation on Queensland, and I was taken to the Cobalt Gorge, which is near the Andara lava tubes, which has the same rail connection. And Barron Gorge, there's this hydroelectric facility there and a rail history. And so part of the energy, from my perspective, of this original grid was hydroelectric.
Yes, I would definitely
With
agree with that.
I totally agree with that.
with
Yep.
the
Yes.
rails and the S-shaped rivers,
Yeah.
that was all terraformed
Yeah.
to create this system that worked harmoniously. And again, I think when that was destroyed, the earth just went.
Mm. And
And I
apart
think
from
that's what
everything
happened to the
else,
tree.
now we get flooding all the time, right? And that's the same thing because they've destroyed the water system that took care of all
Exactly.
that. Mm.
Exactly. That's exactly what happened. There was this sophisticated and advanced hydrological system, and when the grid was destroyed, it just did its own thing.
Mm.
And I think there probably was a separation of landmass where the oceans are today.
Yes, with
There's so many
Australia for
clues,
sure.
so many clues. And so I'm going to go into my findings. I mean, I get excited about gorges because I find railroad history, and on every continent,
Mm.
and waterfalls, they're all together. And on
Yep.
every continent, you have vanished rails. Why the heck did they take the rails out?
Mm.
They
Yeah, we've
had
got
them.
them
They had
everywhere. They were
perfectly working
always,
infrastructure.
yeah, always for
Same
log
thing in
cutting
the
or something. Yeah.
Yep. So they come in. Whoever did this, whoever invaded, whatever invaded, came in when this happened and cut down the trees, started killing life of all kinds.
Mm-hmm.
I just finished up a series on looking at the Great Lakes.
Yeah,
And,
which weren't
throughout
on
this
the old
whole thing
maps.
is, yeah, I don't think they were there. I think that was
Mm.
part of this destroyed infrastructure. And I think it was a very powerful part of the grid because of all the rail and the waterfalls through that whole area and the canals. And, again, they come in and they tell the story, well, we built this sometime in the 1800s and blah, 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 blah. But it's just clear to me. And I'm doing my best to try to present it in a cohesive manner with all of these examples, to show how it's, to me, it's the clues are there,
Mm.
and it's very shallow. So many places are just shallow around the coasts, and maybe deep in the middle part of it. And you see that in all of the Great Lakes. You see that in the research I've done on the
Mm.
coasts of continents. It's shallow, and then it goes down into
Yeah.
canyons and whatnot. And I think that's where the land was sank or became submerged on all continents. And that in the early 1800s, when all the explorers were coming around, when Matthew Flinders was circumnavigating Australia, and when Lewis and Clark were exploring the Western United States, and other explorations between 1800 and, let's say, 1850, they were exploring the world after this
Mm.
cataclysm.
Yes, totally.
Mm-hmm.
See what
Mm-hmm.
was left, right?
That's what they were doing, and claiming land.
Mm-hmm.
But more than anything, they needed to see what was left, map it out, get specimens, create their new narrative about the original people who actually were the builders of it. But they had to give us a new story, which has been very effective, and take credit
Yes.
for the actual builders of it.
Yeah, they've done
Who,
such a marvelous job. I mean, after all of our research and everyone who's got their attention on trying to figure out, you still can't name them. Like it's so, like the best I've named them as is the Empire of the Dead. From
but
my,
you can name them.
well, you can,
They're
okay,
they're the traditional landholders.
I mean, you can't, like, it's very hard to name the invader. Like it's like, because I have dismissed off planet as a concept. And so it has to be here somewhere, the origin of it. And it's difficult to grasp. Like they've done a pretty amazing job to keep us so unable to really literally name them. So I'm at them being from the underworld. That's where my concepts are with the invaders, linking
Right.
it all through the water and the electricity. But man, it's just a theory, right? So everyone's just got their theories on it. And I honestly find it remarkable that to this point, we haven't been able to like nail that aspect. Like it's pretty phenomenal.
Yeah, and I'm completely comfortable. They're not human. They're not human.
Not us, no.
They're not human. They feed on humans.
Yeah, they're parasitic. They're
And
binary.
they give us garbage.
Definitely.
So we're not allowed to have any truth. They don't care if we believe something, but their goal is to have us distracted, dumbed down, divided,
Mm, mm,
and And then,
Controllable. Mm.
we've got this energy that we're generating from our lowest levels of consciousness that they're feeding on. That makes them happy.
Mm.
I do believe it's a spiritual battle we're in, and I do not believe that they win.
No.
I believe light wins. I believe God wins. I believe we wake up and say no. I believe there's other things happening, and I do not believe we're alone in this epic battle
Mm.
of light versus dark. And we're the pawns. We're the unknowing pawns that are easy to divide, that are easy to distract, and hard to bring back into unity, which is where we were before this happened.
Agreed.
And we just, and I think, I can speak for myself again that, that's why I can't stop doing this. And if for no other reason than to get a different perspective out in the field for people to consider.
Yeah, because like it feels like as I've started to deep dive in the writing of this book, the fall from unity basically gave us polarization. So we sort of generated this idea of bipolar internally, and that's the denotes separation. So, and every single structure that exists in our current history of the last 500 years is a control system based on separation. That's its
Mm.
foundational. So that's why I dismiss all of religion, because it's basically, it can only exist in a separate field, in separation. All wars, all conflicts. I mean, humans don't wear that well on their systems. They don't wear murder and war well. It's not our nature to do that. And yet history is only told through the eyes of war, conquer, kill, reset, war, conquer, kill. This is all the control grid speaking. So from that perspective, I can see clearly what's binary, what's relational, what's unified, what's bipolar. And we've always been told that this whole realm it is a realm of dualism, a realm of polarization. But I don't think that's natural to the earth, and I don't think it's our nature. And I think as far as like working through the kind of the solution in all this, at the heart of it is sort of like basically working through your own bipolar mind and starting with a bipolar perspective, because like we as a human race need to we need to move through the process of unifying our mentality, our mental
Mm.
disposition, what's going on inside our mind. To me, when we chuck around words like ascension and stuff like that, and it's always like up there and off planet, and I've dismissed all of that, but ascension internally would be the process of acknowledging this, constant chatter inside our brains that beat ourselves up. We've got this jail keeper, we've got the invader in our heads.
Mm.
The invader exists mentally beating ourselves up and polarizing every single perspective.
And I think that's because the invader has put themselves
Yeah,
there
100%. It's
and
like a
given us a belief
specialty.
system that has us stuck in our heads instead
Yep.
of our heart,
Yep.
which is a greater intelligence than our brain.
Yes.
Our heart is what connects us.
Mm.
And we're not like this in our natural state. But
No.
they found it easy to manipulate us
Mm.
because of our ego minds and how we, you know, need to know things and compartmentalize. And, it's hard for a lot of people to let go of those things and
Mm.
receive new information. I mean, I know that was critical for me uh, when I started doing this work, that I was open to receive. I was
Mm-hmm.
open to receive. I did not have to have things come to me in a certain way. And through the course of living my life, this has been a lifelong process.
Mm-hmm.
It's been synchronistic. It's been experiential. I never planned on doing this. I had interest. I had interest in hidden history. Um, I loved watching Unsolved Mysteries with
Yeah.
Robert Stack when I was a kid. I loved In Search of with Leonard
And
Nimoy.
Nimoy, yes.
Yep.
You know, I love that stuff. Arthur C.
Mm.
Clarke's Mysterious
Yeah, the old
World.
National Geographic
Give me more.
docos.
You know,
Yeah.
what? Huh? You know, and I it was like I was getting this information in the ways that it was available. Um, I saw when I was like I was in the Army from 1982 to 1986. I was stationed in Germany, and there was an archaeology encyclopedia, and I think Machu Picchu was on the cover. Um, and it talked about places like Mohenjo-Daro in Pakistan, and all these places. I'm looking at it like going,
Yeah.
Yep.
who built that?
Yep.
Because they love us to
I just
focus on
turned
Egypt.
63.
Mm.
When I just turned 63, that was when I was 19.
Yeah.
And it's like throughout my life, it's like this was the kind of stuff I wanted to know. And there's so little information available. And then the internet comes along, and then there's a little bit more. And I just started to get this information in from the things like I enjoyed watching, like Megalithomania, conferences, presentations that I saw on YouTube. And it gave me the education I needed when I started getting my own information and knew what to do with it. And then when I really understood what I had received, so if it was a download, it was like a lifelong download. I realized I have to get this back out,
Yeah.
and found that I had the skill sets to do that. Um, and it's just taking me deeper and deeper into it. So I'm very interested in the energy grid, what happened to it, how to identify it. And like I said, I can look at any gorge and with waterfalls and all of that and find a rail history. And in more cases than not, that rail is gone. And it was also brought online for mining. The rail infrastructure was brought online for mining.
Yeah.
And so I was looking at the history around Cairns and the Hodgkinson goldfields and Dimboola and the historic train station that's there. I was looking at Cobalt Gorge, and it's connected with the Undara Park. There's a historic rail line that goes through the Etheridgeshire rail line.
So you see the railways as like the connectors, like the circuitry connecting up all the different components kind of thing?
I suspect it was maybe the engine.
The engine.
Let's say we're talking about an energy grid.
Mm.
And so I think the rail was maybe a driver of
Yeah.
this power system.
Basically
And
dragging electrons and things around. Yeah.
and it was connected to the waterfalls. And I suspect the old mills probably had something to do with this system. I've
Like
been trying to figure out where
windmills, you mean, kind of thing, or
Watermills.
any mills,
water
grist
wheels?
mills, sawmill, water wheels. I think that was part of the system.
Yep.
And in so many cases around the world, and I've looked in a lot of different places, there's this history of this sawmill or grist mill in a place, and then there's just ruins there now,
Yeah.
or a dam and there's just ruins there now, or there was a railroad here, there's just nothing left. It's
Mm.
overgrown. And so it's like the controllers, we can call them that, let's call them that. The controllers used what they needed to get things up and running again. And when it no longer served their purpose or agenda, they
Yeah.
got rid of it.
Yeah. Into the tram
And
system, right? Which they ripped out so they could sell us petrol.
right. And now they're trying to bring it back.
And
So you see
now that they've
light
worked out how to
rail and
control it, yeah.
yeah. And
And
it's interesting
Stardust
that Melbourne has one of the most intact trolley
train systems.
systems
Mm.
in the world. Sydney had one of the largest outside of Europe, used to. But for whatever reason, they kept Melbourne's in place.
Mm, mm, mm.
And if it's okay, I would like to give a little presentation
Let's
I put
go.
together
Let's
on
do it.
Let's do it. Yeah,
mostly Melbourne.
Yeah, Melbourne has such an extensive tram system. We've seen it in Sydney being taken out. When we were in Rockhampton, which is in the freaking middle of really nowhere, like there was a tram system that
Yeah.
Cam and I saw when we were there. So it is the tram systems were everywhere, all over Australia.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but Melbourne was sort
Totally.
of the
They were.
last man. Mm.
They were. Let me just.
All right, settle in, everyone. Michelle's presenting. This is where Cam and I get to sit back and enjoy and learn about our country.
If I didn't have the ley lines to follow, I I wouldn't be able to do this.
Yeah, yeah. Good thread.
But it's been very, very, very productive.
All right, you're not sharing screen yet, by the way. It's just
I've just got the Zoom up there.
Hang on just a second.
But yeah, the water's interesting. I've been looking into that. I think water wheels and all this were a big free energy system, right? Because when most people talk about free energy, they think about the spies and the ether, but I think there was more than one kind of system, right?
Exactly. And I'm honing in on the hydroelectric portion of it.
Yeah.
As
cool.
one aspect of it. Can you see that okay?
Totally.
Yes.
Go for it, mate.
Okay. Very good. All right. So I was researching an alignment years ago. I mean, this is one of my very first efforts going from place to place when I found this in Geelong. And that's,
nice.
of course, near Melbourne. And I encountered the historic building on the left, and it was called the Geelong Exhibition Building and Market Square Clock Tower.
Did it burn down, Michelle?
Of course. The clock tower was demolished in 1923, and the remaining buildings were demolished in the early 1980s to make room for a new shopping center. The Geelong Exhibition Building was said to have been built in 1881, which is the same year that the First Presbyterian Church of Santa Ana in California on the right was first established, and it was in use until 1905. And so you've got a similar time frame here with construction dates that were given of 1881, and then they both existed in some form for whatever period of time. But you can see the similarities between the two buildings on different continents.
Windows.
With the windows,
Mm.
Like the cathedral looking window, and then you've got the triptych windows here on both of them. And you commonly see the windows in like one or groups of 2, 3, 4, 5 are the most common.
Okay, yeah, right. So we got 3 on top and then 2 down below. So interesting.
So you've got the similarity of architecture already that didn't exist for very long in our narrative. And this is just one example, but it seems like these buildings, the architecture itself was connected with this energy grid.
Yeah.
With these windows and the rods.
So like sacred geometry and cymatics and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Exactly. The steeples, whatever it happens to be, was part of this antiquitech, if you will. So on the left, you have examples from what we would consider more modern times, like the Sydney Central train station that was said to have been built in 1906, looking very much like the North Toronto train station in Ontario, said to have been built in 1916. And you have the same features. You've got archways, you've got clock tower, you've got this impressive, onion dome here, steeple looking thing here. It's like a little bit of a different, it's not exactly the same, but it's very similar.
Yeah.
And again, that's very, very common. these grand union stations,
Mm.
in many cases looking like they were also used for airships,
Yes.
Yep, agreed.
with a hangar looking appearance
Hmm.
to them as well.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And, the
Got the little
stories,
balcony up there.
yeah. So the stories are told that are told about them are very similar time frames, generally speaking. And in many cases, these beautiful Union stations were torn down.
Of course.
Penn
So
Station in New York comes to mind.
yes, Penn, yes. So do you see them basically like as like componentry, I guess? So they're the same, they have the same function, all these different buildings that look alike, but they might just be, aesthetically different a little bit.
I think they have the same function. It would have been part of this energy grid,
Mm.
is these train stations. However, that all worked together. I want a time machine and go back and
Yeah, I know, right?
see how all of this works together. But it truly appears that it was designed to work together. And
Mm.
every bit of infrastructure on the earth had a functional
Hmm.
purpose
Hmm.
on this grid.
Yeah. I mean, in what I've been writing about, I've put them all that these buildings were all constructed under a unified field, which means that they were part of a time before the control grid, and that would be me before the flood. So yeah.
Right. And I think the control grid, the controllers turned this free energy grid into the matrix.
And the
So basically
matrix,
by changing the frequency and things like this.
And they reverse engineered it. And I'm going to talk about
Mm.
that in the
Cause
presentation,
yeah,
because
because like stadiums, right? They would have been used to generate good energy, and now they're basically loose harvesting machines.
right. And I'll have some good examples as we go through this. So that brings me to Flinders Street Station in Melbourne on the top left, and Marunouchi Station in Tokyo on the bottom
yep,
right.
Nice,
same,
yeah.
yep.
Now, I've known these two stations look very similar for a very long time. But it was only recently that I thought, maybe I should compare these two places. And that's what I'm going to go through and show you here. And so what we're told about the Flinders Street Station is that it was designed in the French Renaissance style and built between 1905 and 1910. And Marunouchi Station in Tokyo was built between 1908 and 1914.
Mm-hmm.
And it was said to have been designed as a restrained celebration of Japan's victory in the 1904-1905 Russo-Japanese War.
Mm-hmm.
And they typically have stories like that. We did this to commemorate or celebrate
Mm.
something.
Let's build something
Um,
completely un-Japanese to, celebrate the Japanese victory.
Yeah, and I've been in both, spent time a lot in both of those train stations, and they're extremely similar internally.
and as the narrative says, they're supposed to have been built around the same time. But,
Mm.
again, it's pretty
Yeah,
monumental.
I mean, considering Japan was basically apparently closed off from the Western world
yeah.
for all those hundreds of years leading up to, say, the construction of this. And Australia was basically brand new and
Mm.
like had nothing, no infrastructure, no power tools, no quarries, no nothing. Yeah, it's worth noting those two variables. They shouldn't have had influence, like any influence on each other. And yet they're
Mm.
like a mirror design.
Mm.
And I think what we're finding in independent researchers like us, the narrative falls apart when you start looking at it.
Ah,
We were never supposed to find out any of this stuff.
No.
And this has been more an instrument of our awakening, the internet, than one of control, which was, I'm sure, their original reason for it. And that aspect is certainly there in different ways, but it's also our best way of doing our own research and connecting with each other and finding these things out. And one of the first things that happened around the 1850 timeframe, which is when I think things really got kicked off, like with the Crystal Palace exhibition in London and a lot of things in our narrative coming online around 1850.
Coming
Is
online,
that
literally coming online, because that was exactly the time when they laid the transatlantic cable under the water and gave us what
Apparently.
was the internet. Yes.
right? So that's like I think was the official kickoff of this whole new timeline.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was the same time that they removed critical thinking from the curriculum. They want us to be able to think critically. They wanted to produce people that could read and write and follow instructions for their factories and whatever jobs they had, because that was new, the new economic system that was extractive,
Yeah.
that created their wealth. And we think we're doing good. They pay us, maybe they give us a house and whatnot, and that's all we have. A lot of people that worked in mill towns barely earned enough to live, and the company took all the rest of the money and owned everything.
Well, same today,
So
mate. Same today,
so
just
it's
the government takes it all.
so this is a whole new system that's been superimposed over all of us, and it's affected all of us. But
Well, they
I
got they
think
got 200 years out of it. They got
right,
200 uninterrupted years of getting wealthy and programming their slaves. So,
right.
I mean, I'm very interested where you think the next 200 years is going to go, but I won't interrupt with the flow of the presentation.
Yeah, and I can touch on that as we go through. I'm actually very optimistic, and there in no way can I even entertain the thought that they're going to get away with what they've done here.
Agree.
So they've rigged the system against us and rigged it in their favor.
Mhm.
That's an understatement.
So let's look at a comparison of Melbourne and Tokyo. And in this slide, I've got in the red box the Flinders Street railway station on top and the Marinucci station on the bottom. And you find the same kinds of infrastructure around the railway station. You find national gardens, botanical gardens. You find the Parliament building. You find stadiums. You find industrial areas. You find the cricket ground in Melbourne. You find the baseball and national stadium in Tokyo. So, very, very, very similar layout in both places. And again, I see things in terms of an
Mm.
electrical grid.
Mm.
And this is how the energy grid was originally, and that this is what's been manipulated and is now harvesting our energy. So we have a comparison here of the Victoria Parliament building in Melbourne on the left and the Japan National Diet, which is the Parliament building in Tokyo.
Mm.
They're both massive buildings.
Mm-hmm.
The Victoria Parliament building was said to have been constructed starting in 1855, and we're told that it was built in stages. And the Japan Parliament building was said to have been built between 1920 and 1936. This is what our narrative tells us. And be thinking about these things in terms of, does this timeline even make sense compared with what we're seeing here in these two
No.
places?
No.
And also there's the Hoddle Grid in Melbourne. The Hoddle Grid was said to have been named after surveyor Robert Hoddle, who marked it out in 1837. And architect Robert Russell was credited with establishing the first formal town plan in 1836. But clearly there's an electrical grid here. And I think it was claimed by the colonizers, but I really believe it was already there. And whatever they were doing was involved in re-electrifying it.
So it's
You can,
1836. So literally, they tell us 1860, Melbourne was the richest city in the world. It was all built out. 24 years.
yeah,
24 years.
based on gold,
24 years.
the gold
Yes,
mines.
the gold.
Yeah, the gold mines that are all owned by Chinese because they were there first.
Right. So these are the time frames that we're looking at
Yeah.
in our narrative. And
Mhm.
and I said it just a moment ago, it truly falls apart when you start looking into these things that we were never supposed to know.
Mm.
And
So
Melbourne's grid, Michelle, is very extensive. Like it goes on and on. This grid structure here, it covers so many suburbs now. Like every suburb in Melbourne is gridded out like this, and the tram lines are obviously running on these grid lines, and it's very obvious when you're in Melbourne. It's so obvious. Yeah.
and
This,
and we don't question it. Why would they lie to us? But
Why indeed?
again, when you really start looking into it, it's like, okay, and it's hidden from us because it's been omitted. The true history's been omitted. So of
Mm.
course we assume, well, this must have been built when they told us. When else could it have been built?
Mm.
And here you have the central hall of the National Diet Building in Tokyo, and it's massive.
mhm,
Big.
When you compare the size of the people in it, I mean, why would
mhm.
people that size build a hall that big?
Mm.
And so again, I think we're definitely of much smaller stature than we were before this
Yes,
happened.
but well, I mean, it doesn't make sense in far of resources. If you're building, Melbourne was clearly a new city, right? They tell us, and Australia was a new colony. But even America, Japan, they say was feudal, right? The Americans went in 1840, so they basically are in the same situation. So why would they be using, 10 times as much material as they actually need to build these buildings? Doesn't make any sense.
10 times, try 1,000
A
times, Cam.
thousand times.
Yeah,
And
I
then you need
mean,
all the
of course.
factories, the infrastructure, the
Yeah.
transport systems, which didn't exist.
And that we can't replicate it today. Obviously, we don't replicate it today. We can't.
And our narrative tells us this was built between 1920 and 1936.
Yeah.
So that
Yep.
would have been after World War I and right before World War II. And oh yeah,
Exactly.
the Depression's in there somewhere, and the Depression was worldwide.
Yes,
Yep.
yeah. So where'd the money come
Exactly.
from?
And when we were looking at Australia, Cam, years and years ago, we looked through the cities and man, like they had no power. There was no power. They had no power tools. They didn't have
No.
any infrastructure at all. So, according to the first lot of buildings in Melbourne at the time they were built, most of that stuff had to come over on the boats.
That's what
So
they
the
say,
narrative
including
really
glass, right?
collapses. Yeah, really collapses.
Right.
But Melbourne's a classic because they tell us they built the whole city, but forgot to put the sewage system in. So they went
Yeah.
back and put the sewage system in after they built the city. It's
Yeah,
just
that's a
come
classic
on.
story. Yeah, so it went from being a new colony with no resources to suddenly them finding gold and then shipping the gold all the way back to the UK to transform that into actual wealth and money and then bring it all back. And then like 2 days later, Melbourne's built. Is essentially the story. Yeah.
Right. Right. And thank goodness we're waking up to the inconsistencies of what they tell us.
Man, his
Okay, so in
story.
this next, I'm going to do a comparison of the gardens. So the gardens in
Mm,
here are the green boxes. In Melbourne, the Royal Botanical Gardens, and in Tokyo, was looking at the Kokyo-Gaian National Garden, which is close to Marunouchi Station, like the Royal Botanical Gardens is close to Flinders Street Station. And then I was also looking at Hemariku Gardens in Tokyo, and there's some others as well. But just a couple examples here that I'm going to go through. So you've got the Royal Botanic Gardens in Melbourne on the south side of the Yarra River. And so that's where you have garden beds, lakes, and lawns, and around 50,000 individual plants, representing about 8,500 species. And so I've got this contrast because I'm finding it everywhere. You've got the bounty of the gardens, the Royal Botanic Gardens, and you have this in Hamilton, Ontario as well. You have on one side of Hamilton Harbor, you have spread along the shore, you have different botanic gardens, Royal Botanic Gardens. And on the other side, you have the Bayfront Industrial Area in Hamilton, and you have the same thing in Melbourne. You have on the north side of the Yarra River, you have this densely developed industrial area with rail yards and port facilities. And I do believe that's significant in terms of this rewiring of this original energy grid and what they're doing and how they're turning the bounty and the fertility of the original Earth and original grid, which on one hand they seem to be celebrating, but then they're turning it into these wastelands of industry and polluting the environment.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that's just some random thing happening. I think it's very deliberate.
Yep, it's very consistent. It is very consistent.
Mm.
In Tokyo, you have the Kokyogayan National Garden is the outer garden of the Imperial Palace of Japan. And it's also the location of Edo Castle, which was the seat of the Edo Tokugawa shogunate. And that was the ruling shogunate prior to the whole 1854 thing. With Perry coming in and all the stuff that happened with the opening of Japan, which is all very interesting that it's happening in the same period of time. And there's a lot of things with the modern history of Japan that I've researched and how highly involved the colonial powers were in creating the Japan that became militarized and the role that it played from the 1900s through the end of World War II as a military antagonist. It came from trading companies and foreign interests, and I think that is also quite common in terms of our modern history. It's come about for a reason in a planned way. Yeah. And again, it's this takeover of the earth, this takeover of the grid, this takeover of the earth's people has been highly planned and highly organized by whoever invaded and is doing this, whatever they are.
And looking like a star fort there too, by the way.
It does. It really, it is. It is. And I look at star forts as batteries or some component of this grid system. You mentioned cymatics earlier. There's definitely a cymatic component to these star forts that in our narrative were given this military function.
Deflects cannonballs. Come on, Michelle.
Yes. And what were the cannon? That's another.
And what was a cannon? Yeah, I know, right?
What were they? What were they? You see these cannon with these tiny little bores.
Yeah.
These tiny little cannonballs. And so that military purpose gave a reason for their construction, and in many cases it gave a reason for their destruction. And this whole idea of this free energy generating grid being completely obscured and hidden, and somebody's still benefiting from it, but it's not for us to know.
Not yet, but we're getting there.
We're getting there. So Tokyo Bay is the largest industrialized area in Japan, and it was built on extensive reclaimed land and features 2 large industrial zones. And so, actually, I'm ahead of myself. So this is the Hama Rikyu Gardens in Tokyo, and it's a metropolitan public garden at the mouth of the Sumida River. It's surrounded by seawater and this moat here, and water's filled in by Tokyo Bay, by seawater filled by Tokyo Bay.
So they say that that's reclaimed land, that park?
It's something. I mean, if you look at it, that's clearly artificial.
A wall. Yeah, and it's got a man-made canal in there, we can see, and because the reclaimed, like, man-made shorelines again, right, everywhere.
Right. Right. They most definitely are. And so, but there's a garden area, and then Edo Castle. We talk about it being a star fort. It became the Tokyo Imperial Palace in 1871. So that's the new emperor, and the shogunate, the Edo's Tokugawa shogunate, the previous ruling dynasty, they're gone. They've been
Blacked
obsoleted
out
and taken
by,
out.
yeah,
And the new emperor is basically a puppet of
puppet.
the of the
Yeah.
colonizers, essentially. And this, you can find this in research. It's not just this finding that we're pulling out of the air. They were puppets.
Mm.
And a lot of the rulers that came in across the earth were handpicked to replace the original rulers of a particular location. So again, here's an industrial area around Tokyo Bay. And so you've got this industrialization side by side with the areas that they're trying to keep as places where you can find these specimens of life, these gardens. And so I give these as examples of this stark juxtaposition
Juxtaposition.
of vibrant gardens and industrial areas. And so that would be two things being seen or placed together with a very contrasting effect. And so, like I said earlier, with the example of the Royal Botanical Gardens, this is Hamilton in Ontario, on the western end of Lake Ontario, and you've got this whole side of Hamilton Harbor has the gardens, and then you've got this bayfront industrial area here where you have the artificial outlines here, but you've got steel and rail and all kinds of manufacturing going on here.
Are you
Uh,
so are you suggesting, Michelle, that the industrial areas were once gardens? Or are you suggesting the
well,
industrial areas have been added on since?
I think they've been added on since, but then if you consider the idea that this is a different Earth, a new world, if you will, after the cataclysm, and whatever new system they're bringing in to superimpose over what was here before, so they knew the power of the grid and the energy that was available and how all of the natural things work together with this grid, including the giant trees, I believe, were part of this. And then they superimpose, if you will, this hell on earth in basically the same locations where they're polluting, they're creating wealth, if you will, from the products that they're creating here. But this is extractive.
Mm.
It's not conducive to life, and I think that's a very deliberate placement with the number that I've been seeing of examples like this, where you find the juxtaposition of both the gardens and the industrial area,
Yeah, it's
like in Melbourne.
everywhere. It's Hong Kong. It's everywhere I've been. This is mirrored. China, all the different places I've been in around the Middle East. This is always mirrored. Always mirrored.
Yeah. And then I'm finding golf courses. I believe they were part of the grid. I think they were circuits. They're called links. So I think they were like links between circuits. And I find them in the strangest of places, all along the shores of lakes. I found them in when I was looking at Australia. Um, in a lot of times in places that don't have that big of a population, you'll see golf course after golf course after golf course.
100%.
Yeah.
So it's anomalous, and I think it's just carve out a bunker and you've got, or carve out a mound and you've got a bunker, and you've got, a place where the elite can play in many
Yes.
cases. These private country clubs. There's some public golf courses, but a lot of them private country clubs. And it's another form of dominance, I think, and rubbing it in our faces.
Are you suggesting that under golf courses, they've got infrastructure? The golf
I,
courses are just on top
I think the golf courses are infrastructure. That's what
them
I'm saying.
themselves. So tell me about that. Like, what aspect of the golf course?
The mounds, I think they're mounds.
Okay.
I think it's a cover up of mounds, and I think they served a function on this energy grid. And they're in many places they're called links. They're
Yes,
actually
yeah.
called golf links, and I think that's what they were. Just like
So,
starports are called batteries.
Mm. And
so tell me,
fairways, you got to pay the fare, right?
Yeah, good
tell me
connection.
about the mounds. Tell me about the mounds. What do you mean mounds? Tell me about that.
Mounds and earthworks. Um, when I'm there, I can probably point them out, but there's a lot of places that have perfectly formed geometrical areas in the landscape. A lot of times you'll see tanks on top of them, or tank farms. I think they were constructed. I think these mounds were constructed by the original civilization and served a function on the grid.
Because there's a lot
I
of
see
mounds in
them.
America too, right? Like literally,
Right,
they say that there was a society called the Mound Builders.
right, right. And again, I think this was worldwide. It's not just in North America. It's in other places. I've seen the same kind of mounds in Scotland that you see in the southeastern United States, in
So, do you think
Louisiana.
they're burial mounds? Because in the US, they tell us they don't tell us, but we know they've found lots of giant skeletons in them, right?
That's what you hear.
That's what you hear.
That's what you hear. You hear that they're burial mounds. I think they weren't. Maybe they did serve that function. Maybe it was just an convenient excuse when the
Excuse.
academics came in the
Yeah.
1800s to try to explain everything, because I found articles and um, passages in books that talk about giant bones just being found randomly when they're excavating for a road or
Yeah.
something like that. And so my opinion is they just died where they were. That
Hmm.
when this happened, I think they were buried, and um,
Well, they've got to be something because Walmart has knocked down more mounds in the US than anyone and put their shops on top of them.
mhm. I think they were part of the grid. I think these
Yeah.
mounds were part of the grid.
So if we were to excavate these mounds, Michelle, what would you think would be found?
Piezoelectric material.
Bones.
Bones, yeah. Is that
That's bones.
I think, I mean, I'm not saying that they weren't, because I don't know. But I do know that when you see a landscape like a golf course that's perfectly rounded, undulating, rolling, not natural, that it was made for a particular purpose.
You know, the Vikings, I've been doing a chapter on the Vikings, and the evidence they have for the Vikings as a culture, as an even a thing, as a group, it comes down to the two mounds and a boat that they found. Like the evidence they have is so little, but it's very like one of those bits is of mounds. And of course, from the perspective of that, it was, mounds were burial. They were burial mounds and they were full of bones. So the only time I've ever heard the term piezoelectric is when Cam and I did the series on the catacombs and we started to look at the impact of bones on this realm and how many are above surface, unburied, and utilized in what I would call the frequency overlay.
Mhm.
But when you say piezoelectric, are you talking about bones or are you talking about something else?
I'm talking about something else, but
Oh, good.
you're
Let's
correct.
go.
You're quite correct in pointing that out. And that brings up another finding that there's something going on with cemeteries.
Oh, yes.
There's something going on with
We love the
cemeteries.
topic of cemeteries.
What it
Yep.
is, I don't know, but they're on ley lines
Yep.
and they're connected to rail infrastructure.
Yep.
Um, so there's definitely something going on. Now, is that part of the original civilization? Were they utilizing bones for some purpose? Or like you said, did that come in with the overlay? Um, but again, I think whoever built this grid worldwide, um, I think we're going back to Lemuria, that goes up through Atlantis, that comes up through relatively recent times. I think it's the same civilization. And I
Mhm.
think it was destroyed recently, not thousands of years ago.
100% agree.
Yeah.
And so whatever the builders were, they knew what they were doing. And so I look at the Moors, I believe they're the same as the original tribes of Israel.
Yeah.
Um, I think it's all the same civilization. And
Yeah.
then when you get into whoever this is, I think they stole their identity and
Mm.
claimed it for themselves. Um,
The mimics.
Rothschild and, the whole Ashkenazi situation. I think they took the identity of the original people
Mm.
and took it for themselves and said, we're the ones. And I think this was a worldwide civilization where the 12 tribes were spread out around the world, laid out in sacred geometry, laid out in accordance with the constellations, the zodiac, and they weren't fighting each other. They were working in harmony. Um, and maybe each had a different contribution, let's just say, because I don't know. But I do see evidence of that. I will be giving some examples in the presentation that I give on the 18th, of some of the things I found and what I'm talking about. Um, so we've definitely been living through a very painful time for humanity, and in spite of everything that they've thrown at us, we're waking up, and that's very encouraging. They couldn't stop this, and they knew they couldn't stop it, and so they threw everything at us to keep it from happening. But it's not happening as quickly as I'd like, or there's still a lot of people that are asleep. But the fact that people are waking up at all is pretty amazing.
Mm. I think it's ramping up recently. I think we're getting there. They're just pushing too hard at the moment, right? With all their flock cameras
Right,
and data centers, it's waking more and more people up.
Well, when
right,
you
right.
when you guys say waking people up, what do you think the end goal is there? When do you consider yourself waking up?
Well, I don't think anyone really, it's just a term. I think more people become more aware of the situation they're in and that
Mhm.
the government's not their friend,
And what do you
right?
think the impact is of everyone understanding that?
That they'll
It,
just stop participating.
Mm,
that's definitely an ideal for this, but they can't do what they've done. The only way they could do it was to trick us
Mm,
into giving our sovereignty away and to keep us dulled and distracted and arguing and all the things that we have to do to survive. Work, we get home from work, we're tired. um, buy because you need to be a consumer and have all these great things. um, and that still has a powerful impact, but I think as more people become aware to what's been going on here and maybe aware spiritually, um, and start to question the things that we've always been told to believe about our world and realize they're lying to us about so many different things on every level,
mm,
really everything. They're lying
yeah,
to us about everything.
yeah,
And
especially
so
who we are.
So once you come to that realization, you maybe start making different choices, and it as much as you're able to, withdrawing consent from that system.
Mm.
And they want our energy. We're the prize. And we don't know that. Humanity is very important in all of this.
Well, we have ultimate authority because we are the ones that come from here. Especially, I call it the terrestrial realms now. And actually, I was very interested the other day because I started to quirk out on one of the chapters about the connection with the architecture worldwide and water and how fundamental water is in and around it in part of the designs and the aquifers and the fountains and the baths and yet we don't see sewage or plumbing. So it's nothing to do with like, using a kitchen or a toilet. But the water is fundamentally a massive aspect of the architecture. And I think it's because we were in relation with the aquatic realm as well as the terrestrial realm. So the architecture was shared. It was relational with all living beings. So to me, that was one quirky little side note I went down with the buildings and the aquatic realm. Because the aquatic realm is also completely deleted and dismissed from our attention and focus. Even though in history, and we go through this in live show for a few hours, it's all been documented over and over and over and over again. This aquatic realm of other beings that we were in relationship with. So yeah, just side note, just thought I'd mention that. But for me, when we come to this whole idea of what is the end goal here, like we're literally everyone's waking up, but when we talk between the three of us and our audience, that's been decades now. The three of us and our audience have been onto this for a long time. So I don't have my attention on the rest of the world and where they are at. But with our audiences, we have been on this for a long time. So, and what's the end result there? Yes, we do we make better choices and we don't give in to the government and we don't do our census and we do all that sort of stuff. But ultimately, my idea of what would be the end goal is to basically understand that the true power source is the earth. And that I was when I was writing, I was like, every superhero, every mythical or every film or book or comic that ever encapsulates a superhero, they always get their power off world. They get their power from meteors or some alien spiders bitten them or some fucking things happening. They're in a science lab. You never see a superhero fly into the forest, shove its hands onto the ground and receive the power of the earth and regenerate. You never see the connection represented across our whole cultural spectrum between the power, human, and the earth. It's never represented. So, I mean, I think it's all gearing us back to really understanding that the technology, the power, and the authority is between us and the earth. And everything in between is basically a dead mimic that's stolen our focus. And in stealing our focus, we bring it to life. We're the ones that have to bring it to life.
And I think another aspect of what you're talking about, Kelly, is just the whole idea of the hero's journey and
Yeah.
the phoenix.
Yep. Yep.
That is a persistent theme, and I think very much represents us. That after the hero has gone through all kinds of ordeals and horrible and scary experiences, the hero triumphs. And I think that's a metaphor for our journey.
Pachamama. Pachamama triumphs. Sophia, Gaia, the earth triumphs. It has to, it must. It is the end result.
It has to.
Nothing
It has
exists
to.
outside of it. And everything else is just stories and images we are fed all the time. That's why I believe that the invader, are from Earth. Just maybe not an aspect of the terrestrial aquatic realm that we're aware of, but from Earth within this system. I don't believe they came from somewhere else.
And then when you look at the very different definition of a parasite needs a host.
Mm.
What happens when they've destroyed the host?
They move on, right? Or they
They
die.
have nothing, which
Yeah.
I think is what transhumanism is about. I think they're trying to figure out how to make it last forever, so they can last forever. But
Mm.
they have to have a host,
Yeah, well, they need
whether it's
us.
the
We don't
earth,
need them,
whether it's
right?
us.
Mm.
And
Um,
they were never in reverence to the earth as well. I mean, that's obvious.
No,
There
they
was
hate
no,
the earth.
yeah, there was no relation, even though I believe they are from this system, they're from our closed earth system. They were not in relation to the terrestrial realm. They weren't. They weren't taking power from it. And because they terraformed the earth to such a fucking extent that you could not be connected with it in order to do what they did. So yeah, I mean, I think which then it only leads me to the connection with the underworld and the dead. That's the only place I can go within the earth, and within that, the electricity that comes from deep under the underworld, and where we bring in the AI, sentient AI, energetic of the non-living, the
Mm.
artificial.
so let's look at this example here that I found when I was looking around the Buffalo area, which is on the eastern end of Lake Erie. And I found the same thing with the botanical gardens here, and
Yeah.
then this whole industrial area, polluted area here. And so you have countless examples, like you said,
Mm.
of this mirroring of, on one side it looks like they're celebrating life, and on the other side they're
Mm.
definitely not.
That's true.
And
I've
they're
The
never made that
polarity.
connection.
Mm.
Yeah, it's totally polarized. Yes. And I've seen it all the time, all the time. It's so ingrained in us that you are prepared to mentally fly into an airport near a great big city anywhere in the world, and you've got 20 minutes going through the industrial area. Like it's so ingrained in us. It's very normal. You're going to find it when you fly into Australia, wherever you end up flying around. It's the same thing. So, but I've never looked at it
Mm.
from this like version of events, industrial plus botanical gardens. It's
Yep.
true.
And like you said, they've normalized it for us.
They have totally normalized it.
And they're digging everything up. I mean, I know flying into Phoenix, you can see it from the air, you can't see it from the ground. They're mining everywhere. And I already know they're mining all over Australia. And
Mm.
I'll be talking about some of those examples.
Mm. Indust again. Industry. Right.
In dust.
So, Campbell, you mentioned the stadiums. And so in this slide, I want to talk about the sports facilities, and they're highlighted in the blue boxes near the train stations. So in Melbourne, you have Marvel Stadium and the cricket ground, and you have the National Stadium and Baseball Stadium in Tokyo. So Linder Street, you've got Marvel Station on one side, and you've got Melbourne Cricket Ground on the other side. And then you've got the baseball and National Stadium here, close to the Parliament and not too far from the train station, kind of squished into all that stuff.
Yep.
Very similar shape. Mulrose Stadium is a multi-purpose sports and entertainment stadium on the left, and
Mm.
is the second largest stadium in Melbourne after the cricket ground on the right.
The MCG.
Yeah.
And then you've got the Japan National Stadium, which was the Olympic Stadium for the 2020 Summer Olympics. It's now a multi-purpose stadium. And then this baseball stadium hosts the Tokyo professional baseball team and college baseball. And I see these all as originally circuits on this grid also. They're doing something with the stadiums
I mean, it's an
to harvest
interesting,
energy.
yeah,
Mm.
excuse the Olympic Games, isn't it? That it just like
To
it
build
goes around the
stadiums.
world so they can keep building these sporting venues.
Mm.
And where it gets really interesting, like this is in Baltimore in this next slide. And in
London.
city after city, major sporting stadiums
Wow.
are found near railroad tracks and
Mm.
tracks or former railroad tracks. And this is Baltimore, like I said. Camden Yards was previously a yard for the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad, and it was converted into today's Oriole Park for the Major League Baseball team. And it first opened in 1992. So you've got the stadium right next to where the railroad tracks were. And then you also have another stadium. This is the football stadium, and that's also in the Camden Yards area. And there's still railroads there today, rail yards there today. And so kind of getting back to what we were talking about with what were we looking at here, I think it's a significant finding. I don't think it's random that things are laid out like this. And I believe it's about energy transference. And so I think the railroads were an important component for the transference of free energy on the original grid. And I think this has been replaced by the harvesting of human energy without our awareness, since these places are on or near existing and former railroad tracks. And you also find roadways and highways that were on top of what were railroad tracks. And that's very common. Railroad tracks are gone, and you've got highways and roadways over them. And again, you've got the Flinders Street station here with all this going on. In Melbourne, close to the stadiums, and then in Tokyo, you've got the same idea, very close by.
Yeah, I mean, and even though you're just showing us the contrast between Melbourne and Tokyo, you could choose 100, 1,000 other examples that would mirror this same, process, right? This same layout and structure.
Right. And our narrative tells us everything was randomly built.
Yes.
And you start looking into all of this stuff, and there's no way.
Mm.
There's no way it was randomly built. The story just falls apart.
It was basically built in enhancing natural earth energies, like so all these things would be on natural ley lines or intersection nodes and things like that.
Right. It was all this connecting thing. So like the gardens, and you see the mansions and the estates with the long
Like the
you know what I'm
boulevardy,
talking
yeah,
about?
type,
Yeah, the boulevard.
yeah.
That would have been part of this grid.
Mm.
How it was directed, how the energy was transferred, because this whole system was literally powering everything. But it was for the good of all.
Yes, and it was free.
And it was free. And the controllers have inverted everything
Mm.
and turned it into something that only benefits them. And we don't know anything about it.
They've added a charge.
Yeah. Because they're harvesting our energy. They want to harvest our energy. Let us fight and disagree on details all we want. They don't care. That's why they don't want us to know anything true.
Mm.
And have you found in your research, Michelle, just randomly, slightly off topic, but obviously when Cam and I did Melbourne, the very first thing that we were pretty interested in was the lack of sewage, because Melbourne went from being nothing to then being the most, wealthy city in the fucking world. And then a few years later, it's called Smelbourne because there was no plumbing to deal with sewage. Have you found that to be consistent in other cities around the world, that the sewage systems were put in retrospectively?
I would say so. Where I've had occasion to look at the sewer systems, I would say yes.
Do you think that they were put in, or do you think that that was just the water system that was used, for structured water to get it to fountains and things, and they repurposed it and put our waste in there basically to
Right.
mess with it?
That would make sense to me, Cam.
Mm.
I would
Yeah.
I would concur.
Yeah.
They took what was beautiful and functional on this original grid, and they've just
Mm.
the pollution and the contamination is everywhere.
Which again would show how important water is, right? Because they always just pump it straight into the river.
And also, why would they go through all this trouble of bringing civilization back, giving us what we think is a good life, maybe not the quality of life that existed before on Earth, but we don't
Mm.
know any better. And then take it away from us, which is what we're seeing now, what they're trying to do now with
Yes.
replacement and creating chaos and terror. You go out and somebody attacks you, that kind of thing happening more frequently. Um, and again, it's because they needed us. They needed us to create everything
Yes,
because
that too. Yes.
it's human energy, right? But
Mm.
they needed us to buy into it because, like I said before, they can't just do what they've done. And the only way they can do it is just to tell lie upon lie upon lie. They have to gaslight us and psychologically traumatize us to get our cooperation. And that's again where the awakening comes in. If we know what the hell's going on, um, that doesn't work anymore.
Oh, it's so inverted though, so many layers. Like we've known what's been going on for many, many, many years, but then, we've also fallen into the next layer, which is, truthing our way out of it. But in doing that, we've generated a focused fucking army out there, like it's like there's so many layers to understanding, what it means to sort of like, reject their influence, if you like, and stand with authority. Because, I reckon there's so many layers to what does it mean to reclaim your authority or just even understand your authority or really, you know, activate and utilize your authority. There's so many layers.
There are, and I so admire what you are doing in terms of creating alternatives for our community and finding ways to put into action this understanding that we're talking about,
Mm.
and finding the community to bringing them together to do this,
Yeah.
because it is lonely.
Yeah.
As we know, it's isolating, for
Mm.
people, for everybody that does wake up and find they're the only ones. There's no family support. um it's really, friends are like, huh, you're nuts. um so it's, we're in interesting times, but they're also more exposed than they've ever been.
Mm.
And so it is our time. I do believe that. And we just kind of have to wait, keep doing what we're doing, what we're motivated to do, take action where we can, and live every moment. Look for the blessings, not focus on the fears, focus on the blessings. And I find those blessings every day.
Yeah.
And I find that I love it when good things happen and things work out well, but I'm also finding when things that I am uncomfortable with happen, for some reason, things seem to work out well too. And it may
Mm.
be a lot more uncomfortable, but everything seems to have a way of working out. And I have some recent examples in my life. um, I had a situation. I had two cats, and they'd been a bonded pair for many years, and one of them became territorial with the other one, and he got very sick. And I ended up with a medical situation with him, and not what I wanted to go through, but it had a positive effect because I was able to get some finances consolidated, that I had not before. So it's on in the debt consolidation loan situation. Um, and he came out of it. I just have one cat now, but but I'm just saying that because it was a really hard experience, but it had a very positive
Mm.
outcome for me, and he's
Mm.
doing extremely well. And so I'm just giving that as an example
Yeah,
of
I
what I'm
mean,
talking.
it's like, it's about because one of the other aspects of all this is after all these years and decades, working this out. And even today that you've presented something that we've looked at, like we've been living through for decades, and I've never even juxtaposed them so well before. I've not sat there and went, yes, There's always an industrial park right next to a botanical garden. I've never thought it, but I've lived through it. All these decades of being online, and like from where I stand now, you know, as I spoke to a woman called Anne last week on the topic of imagination and magic, and she said something so great, which I love, which is like you just have to do your bit. You have to do your bit. Just do your bit. Don't try to save the whole world. Don't try to solve the world's
Mm.
problems. Just do your bit. And I'm going to add to that, do your bit, but do it offline because you have to be in the real world to do that bit. Because the online world is their infrastructure. And as much as we don't want to, like, it's so annoying. And that's the juxtaposition. We're like experiencing all this wisdom and research and truth from using that infrastructure. At the end of the day, it's binary, it's zeros and one, and it's theirs. And in spending all our time online, we're not doing our bit for the earth, for the real world, and in replacement of our focus, dust is forming. Things are corroding, things are breaking down because it requires the authority of the observer, our focus.
And to bring in another aspect of this, Kelly, is the old world is going and there's something new coming in, something brand new. And I would say you all are part of that. I've met a lot of people on this journey that have become aware of spiritual gifts. And in many cases, it was like all of a sudden.
Yep.
And have special gifts with frequency, healing, seeing auras, psychic abilities. And, it's like, I think we're in that in-between space. And, I think we just have to be open to the possibility of creating what we want. And I think you guys talk about that a lot. Create the world that you want to be in. And I think that's the time we're in. And I think there's we have a lot of support for that. So it's exciting. It's exciting. And I do have a friend that is interested if you have any Yowie experiences.
Yowie. Ooh.
Yowie.
There might be a few of those around.
Actually, I think there's a Yowie festival happening in the next couple of weeks.
Oh, is it?
Great.
Near Tabulum, Cam. Yes. I've seen the ad pop up. Yes, around from where the old farm was that we had, and inland, through Moree and Narrabri, you get to the Pilgra, and which is a giant tree trunk, but that is very famous for Yowie spotting. Yep, the short little hairy men.
So they're part of this too.
Mm.
My friend has connections with what we call Sasquatch here, and it's quite remarkable. There's definitely something going on there in a positive way.
Yeah, well, the old realm had all sorts of species and cultures, all sorts of things that, have been annihilated, covered up, and disappeared.
Well, or
And
at least taken out of our frequency of vision, right?
absolutely, absolutely. So yes, I've written many chapters on this topic. It's I concur. I think we've got the support of the entire earth, people. The entire goddamn power source of the earth is backing us up right now. That's why we got to get offline and get back into it, because I agree. I think there'll be powers coming online. I think there'll be activations happening. I think there'll be enhancements of human gifts. And I'm not going to even say God-given gifts anymore. Human earth-given gifts. Human natural gifts that we embody. But to embody them, we have to be in it. We have to be grounded by it. We have to be acknowledging an invitation to engage that. And it can't be done here. It just can't be done online. It's not possible, So
Well, online is the mimic, right?
Yeah.
Like telepathy, they give us, FaceTime and, all these different natural abilities we've got. They just mimic and give us their L version of it, the electric, version of it. And that's what we're going to be offered ultimately, right, is come and join our 15-minute cities and have all this stuff, or don't. But I mean, I still
Right.
think it's a tool at this point, and you know, my perspective on the internet, like obviously it's a tool, we can't live through it, but why wouldn't we use their weapons against them?
That, yeah, I mean, it's a tool, and we should, obviously we use it a lot,
Hmm.
but at the end of the day, it can't be the
It's yeah,
only.
exactly. It only
It
leads
can't
ultimately it
distract.
only leads to a 15-minute city, really. So it's a tool.
Totally,
Mm.
totally.
But there's a lot of stuff happening right now. And so,
Yes.
um, I think where we put our attention, where our energy goes is very important.
Yes.
And not going into fear is very important. And, they got far into their plans. They got a long way into it with the 15-minute cities and everything. But ultimately, I don't think they're going to succeed.
I agree. It's all going to
And
fail.
and and so, I don't know. I can't say I know how this is going to look. I don't. Um, I don't know if there's going to be a split, like a 3D, 5D split. I mean, there's so many ideas that have been out there for a long time about this time we're living in now.
Mm.
But I just can't see evil winning at the end of the day. I just can't. And so, um, that's a motivation for me to keep doing the work that I'm doing. I may have to, like I said, find that cruise, you know, go on it or find something. I have found some other ways. I've gotten involved in other activities besides research, which I needed to do for my health. So, I went from not hardly knowing anybody here where I live to having friends coming out of the woodwork, by making some different choices, and um, finding a group of people that are as like-minded as I'm going to be able to find anywhere.
Mm.
Um, and so, I'm working on that for myself, so I don't spend all my time doing this. Um, and that out of necessity, I had some health problems last year, and that got my attention. And
Yeah.
I want to be around for a while, so
Yes.
I've made some changes. But it's like I said, I'm not going to stop doing this. I'm just doing other things as well, which I
Mm.
That's
wasn't
right.
before.
That's right. We've because many of us have sacrificed the rest of everything else to do this work here online. And the time is coming. The time has come, my friends, to get your feet dirty again and take your power from the true power source, that
Mm.
brings life to all things, and do your bit and put your attention on it, because it's turning to dust in absence of your attention. And the dark army is getting stronger as a result of your attention. So, there's like, become a true seeker to earth seeker. That's the thing. All the energy, the answers that are the next layer of all this are on the earth. And if I was to summarize your theory, and before we go, Michelle, we're going to do a little series before Michelle arrives in Australia, by the way. So we do one next week, if everyone's agreeable to that, and the week after, just to build up to the fantastic show in Montville on the Sunshine Coast. Well worth the drive, everyone. But to sum up what you've been presenting today, this little bit, Michelle, at the end of the day, what you're getting to is the earth layer underneath it. You're getting your whole theory is leading to the layer of earth seeking, not truth seeking, but earth seeking underneath all of this infrastructure, and why this infrastructure ended up there in the first place, and why it's been juxtaposed in the first place.
Right. And on top of that, the original was for positive purposes, was for
Yes.
benevolent purposes. And
Always.
whoever came in and did this knows about this grid. They've removed it from our awareness, and they've reversed it.
Mm.
And we don't even know. We have no idea. I'm just going to finish up with a couple of slides. I'm going to go
Mm.
past this. Um,
Yeah, because the
I
original one was unified, right? It was a unified grid.
that's what I've seen,
Mm.
and that's what I
Mm.
believe. And so, here's another one. There was a Luna Park in Tokyo and Osaka, and of course the ones in Melbourne and Sydney. There were Luna Parks all over the earth.
Is the
Um,
one in Osaka, is that still there? Because I didn't even know they had a Luna Park.
that one, the one in Tokyo was said to have been built in 1910 and it burned down in 1911.
What?
And
1 year? That's
in
got to
one
be a
year,
world record.
and then it's not.
1 year
There were
built and
other
burnt down in 1 year?
there were others.
Wow.
And then the one in Osaka was in operation until 1923, and it
Wow.
was said to be built after the one in Tokyo burned down. And
And was
then
it built, burnt down, demolished?
I'm I'm not. I think they. I did not write that down, that detail down. Just that it was in operation until 1923. So Melbourne's Luna Park's been still in operation since
Yeah.
1912.
Mm.
And uh, so this is the one on Coney Island. This is Luna Park, and it burned down in between 1944 and 1946. The park, the original one.
So it's just a good excuse to explain the ruins, right? That they don't want to
Right.
explain.
And it's beautiful and it's all lit up.
That
You
place
see
is
you can see
crazy.
that here in Melbourne. With it all lit up.
Yeah, well, you can still go to that one. You can go to the one in Melbourne. It's a bit shit
Mm-hmm.
now, but you can still go.
Well,
And then
Sydney
I want
burnt
to,
down, didn't it? I think Sydney, they had a big fire or something on one of the roller coasters, didn't they?
yeah,
Yeah, Sydney burnt down and they rebuilt it.
They did rebuild it? Okay.
I'm pretty sure. It's still there. Where's
and I
this in the world?
and I just want to end this on lighthouses, talk about how I think the destruction of the energy grid changed the surface of the earth. And of course, the story is that the lighthouses were built when they were like the 1800s to guide ships. I don't think they were built to guide ships. I think they were already there. I think they
Mhm.
had some other purpose, and that when things sank, they were repurposed into the lighthouses to guide ships because now they needed them for that. But you see this kind of thing where the coast is really craggy. So this is Cape Otway, and this like is right on the edge, like
Mm.
it's going to fall off. And a lot of places they have to move them back a little bit because they are starting to fall off. Um, and then you
Move them
have this,
back.
and then you have these examples like Bradley's Head, where it's
Yeah,
like
in the
really.
water. How did you build the foundation for that? Come on.
And then in New York, you also have weird looking lighthouses that look like they're
Yeah,
buried.
the
You know,
Leaning Tower of
so
Lighthouse.
so when I say I think the grid was destroyed, I've got tons of examples like this.
So
Uh,
you're saying that when they shorted out the grid, that created massive land changes, land
yeah,
went up and land went down, basically.
right. Exactly is
Yeah.
what I believe.
Okay.
Is it changed the land
Well, a
completely?
saltwater flood would do that, wouldn't it? Short out
Yeah.
the
So,
grid.
and
You
I
short
think
the
the
grid,
water filled
yeah.
in. I think the land broke apart, and I think the water filled in because you see places all around the earth where, like, the end of the continent is just a craggy, bluffy,
Great Australian Bight.
cliffy area,
Mm.
and you see that on little islands. All the little islands along the
Yeah.
way are the same way. They're craggy and
Sheer
cliffy,
cliffs. Yeah.
and I'm going to bring this up in the presentation, but there's that map of Australia that shows like the whole continent. I want to say it's from the 1500s off the
The
top of my
Monty
head.
map, you mean? With the
The
lands around
Terra
the
Australis,
outside?
where it's like the whole bottom of the world is Terra Australis,
Yes, yeah. Oh, there's a lot of
and
those maps. Yeah.
I think when the explorers were going out to see what the Earth was like after the cataclysm and claim all these lands, they were obsessed with the southern lands. They were absolutely obsessed.
They seem to be.
The
Mm.
French, the British, the
Yep.
Americans,
The Dutch,
Yep.
Spanish, everyone was down here.
they're all down there. And, even in the case, so I want to say again, I'm not sure if I'm going to pull out the years correctly, but the French exploring expedition and the American exploring expedition, exploring the southern lands,
Mm.
like were within days of each other on the Antarctic continent when they were claiming land for their countries. Same year, like maybe 5 days apart
Yeah.
in our
Five
narrative.
days. Yep. Mm-hmm.
So I definitely think there was more land on the surface,
Oh,
and
for
that
sure.
what we see today,
100%.
the
Oh,
oceans and the lakes and everything was not there, and that the freshwater system probably blended with the salt deposits that are underwater now or whatever, because salt was a part of the grid also. You have the salt lakes, um, they're on the grid lines, a bunch of them in Australia,
Yeah, well, I mean, salt,
Lake Torrens, and
batteries, mm,
uh,
salt
you
bridges.
know, so again, what we see today is not the way that it was. And
no,
No.
if you can fabricate a story, you can fabricate a map.
Well, this
absolutely.
is the other thing. Like, we're just relying on what we can find, but we don't know how true the maps are. We don't even know if the dates are right because that's just takes someone to write a date on it, right?
Right,
But all together, when you put them all together, they definitely show us something different than what we've been told.
right, absolutely. I'm absolutely convinced the Great Lakes weren't there.
Hmm.
They weren't there until relatively recently, just doing a study of the lakes themselves and what's actually there. And that's just the Great Lakes.
Yeah. And then
I
there's
mean,
the
you can
Australian
multiply
Inland
that.
Sea that there's a lot of evidence for, and it's not there anymore, apparently.
There's whales.
Yeah, there's whale bones out there, isn't there? Shells and coral reefs and everything.
Same with the Sahara.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. In the Sahara, they found whale bones. Yeah.
Oh, there's
Yeah.
so much to say about it, but hey, we got to stop now because I don't want us to do a mega show. I want us to do little bits here and there. So I want us to do this again next week, just to keep moving through it. But unless you want to sum up anything, Michelle, for this podcast before I
Oh,
do
I
the
do have something.
housekeeping.
I
Yes,
do
go
have
for it.
something.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I'm going to share the screen again.
Yep.
Hopefully I can get where I want.
See, you guys are excited, right? This is probably going to be Michelle's first and only time in
Yep.
Australia. So, for fuck's sake, if you are, a Tartarian hunter worth your grain of salt, then you really need to come and listen to one of the world's leading researchers in the space. Like what Michelle
Mm.
brings is, it's profound information on par with all the conversations Campbell and I've had over the last 7 years. Like, so well worth the trip. Don't not
Mm.
come.
Yes.
Make the effort. It's all about the real world. Have the adventure. You've got a month to get your shit together, almost exactly a month today. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Friday,
if
18th of September,
yeah,
Montville. Link below.
that's right. Tickets on sale on the website. They're $55. That's good. And I'm going to crack open some champagne and some nibblies. We're going to make it classy. So yeah, come and join us.
Champagne and nibblies. All
Yeah,
right.
why not? Because it's a smaller venue and it's a Friday evening or it's Friday evening. All right.
And thanks for reminding me, Kelly. I just wanted to bring up the reason I'm coming to Australia also is for a retreat that I've been working with some ladies on since our trip to the Balkans. And I has a place called Retreats at Golden Ridge, and this is in Yellow Rock, about a little over an hour's drive from Sydney. So people that live in that part of the world, if you're interested in finding out about some of our day trips, we still have openings. Um, please contact Di, and her email is di@goldenridge.net.au. And we'll be taking a trip to look at a place where a major ley line enters Wollongong at Cornwall Beach in that area. And we're going to take a little trip to Stanwell Park where there's a pyramid. And then another day we're going to spend time at Macquarie Pass at waterfalls. And then we're going to take a walking tour of the Sydney Harbor waterfront and look at it with new eyes. And so if you're interested, please get in touch with Di.
I love
And if you
that.
can make it, we'd love to have you.
Oh,
Mm.
so cool, guys. Go if you're in the area, go on a day trip. Have fun. I would 100% do that. Just to spend some time with you and just to have the to see what how your eyes are seeing it. I love that so much. So highly recommended, everyone. If you're in the new sort of down in Sydney, Newcastle area, like go and take that offer up of a day trip and re-look at your environment in a whole other way.
Yep. And thank you for this opportunity to speak with both of you. Like I said, I really admire the work that you're doing, and together we're going to make it a better world,
We're going to do
and
our
we
bit,
will,
mate. Do our
Yep,
and we
bit.
will.
we will.
That's why we do what we do.
That's why we do what we do. So,
It is.
guys, like that was a tiny little bit of Michelle. That's like a tiny little bit of Michelle's information. Just a convenient bit,
A little bit.
and so much, and yet there's so much more. So, join us next week as we do another little bit, and then of course we've got the live event in September, which Michelle can just speak her little mind out. And no guarantees we're going to finish on time. I'd probably say we're not going to finish on time. We'll probably finish when we've run out of time in the venue versus keeping it to our little schedules. So, yeah, guys, jump online and come and join us. And it's just going to be a lovely, lovely, classy little
Mm.
event. And I'm super pumped, man. And I can't wait to have you here in Australia. Last time I was with Michelle, we had to take our shoes off and ground, didn't we? Do you remember that? We took the heels off
Don't
our
Yeah.
forget
shoes.
that.
It's going to happen again. Be prepared, Michelle.
The pilgrimage.
The pilgrimage,
Michelle, just take
exactly.
your shoes off and walk with me. But
Yes,
there's rocks here.
that's right. That's right.
But I did
Right.
it.
You did do it.
I discovered that the Americans aren't that partial to taking off their shoes. And also, Dorothy, all the Americans, I know
Jeez, wait
that.
till you get here.
Yeah,
Like most of us live without shoes on all
I
the year
know.
round.
Cam and I running down the rocks, down the gravel pavements into the water, shoeless. We look like the hooligans, Campbell. We look like the
Yes.
hippie hooligans, the Australians.
Yeah. Shoes are totally optional here. I've seen some of the American videos saying, "Oh my God, they go into shopping centers in Australia without shoes."
That's right.
I'm like, yeah,
That's true.
and
That's true. But I would
hello,
recommend,
kitty cat.
Michelle, to bring a little pair of slippers or Ugg boots because it's cold at the moment. I have
Hello,
mine on right now.
kitty.
Do
And
you have
it's
your
just
Ugg
like,
boots on right now, Campbell?
I've got my Ugg shoes on, yes.
Yes, and
It's a
I've
little
got
bit
my Ugg boots
chilly.
on. Just a little heads up there. All right, all
All
right.
right, well, that
Well,
was
hello.
awesome. Thank you, Michelle.
you're welcome. Thank you.
All right, fantastic team, fantastic. Well, we'll be here next week with Michelle again to carry on with a little bit of that, a little bit of whatever's happening until the event. So, well, it's
Hmm,
been really fun to be back on TA doing actual TA Tartaria slash podcast. I've been over on the TA channel doing magical little stories, which have nothing to do with Tartaria. So if you would like to join me over there in story time with me, go and subscribe because we're trying to activate the channel again after the big shadow banning. So if you would like to help us out there, go and subscribe now on TA, the actual channel. And it's been really nice to do a Tartaria specific show, which hasn't happened for a few weeks because Campbell
for a
went
while.
AWOL.
Yes. Yes. I went to Tasmania, so videos are coming up on that. Keep your eye out. But links below, guys. Get your tickets. $55. Come and hang out and listen to Michelle.
Excellent. And also Michelle's a key feature in our Tartarian newspaper. She contributes some fantastic articles to that. So we'll have them for sale at the gig as well. So excellent, guys. You all have a fantastic week in the
Yeah,
making because we're only up to Monday. And we'll see you here next week with another episode,
that too.
part two.
Won't be long before I'm there.
And then she'll be
Mhm.
here. She'll be here. She's going
And
to get
she'll
to
be
meet a
here.
kangaroo for the first time.
Countdown is
Oh,
on.
yes. Kangaroos, koalas, platypus. We got them all up here.
Yeah, and the street that I live on is actually the highest density of koalas in Australia. So I will almost guarantee the sighting of a big fat koala bum just for you, mate.
Going to be wonderful.
All right,
Awesome.
everyone. You have a lovely week, and we'll see you next week here on Tartaria, Australia.
All
See you,
right.
mate.
See you
Bye.
guys. Stay
Thank you, everybody.
awesome. Bye.
Bye.